I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
Edmonton versus Florida. 2024 Stanley Cup Final has been set. Siege, I'm sure you have your travel plan set by now for the longest distance between two cities in a Stanley Cup Final ever.
I do. And, you know, I don't know if this is, I haven't fact checked this, but I've seen online that it's the northernmost and southernmost teams ever to face each other in any North American championship, which makes sense. I mean,
yes,
there aren't teams north of Edmonton in the other professional sports leagues in North America. So that's unique. This is going to be such a cool series. I have to say, I'm pretty excited about this one. I think when you could introduce a Canadian team to a final, it just brings a certain energy. Obviously, Canadians get pretty hyped up about hockey. I'm not breaking any new ground with that, but I think the city will be rocking a chance to break a long drought for Canada. You've got Corey Perry and his fifth different team in a Stanley Cup final. Obviously Connor McDavid on this stage, I think, is what will get most of the attention, and rightfully so. Given where he's already at sort of historically in hockey, and how this can even further burnish that legacy. And I think even just him getting some love in the US, maybe to a degree that doesn't always happen, because of the marketing machine in the NHL isn't quite the same as we see around the other sports. But, I would think for the next few weeks, especially if he has more moments like he did in Game 6 to eliminate the Stars, you see him get more love. I mean, the Panthers back there for a second straight year. You've got the Paul Maurice quote machine daily going off the hook. I mean, I just think this series has so many amazing elements to it. And, you won't hear me complaining about the traveling. It's going to be some long days, obviously, but I'm not divorced enough from reality yet where I don't think this is the coolest thing ever I get to go. So I'm going to, I'll bring a good book to read on the plane, probably be writing some stories jammed in there on little Air Canada Rouge flights or whatever. But it's going to be a fun few weeks here. And I just hope we get a good series befitting kind of what it could be. On the table, on the surface, everything is there for a really memorable final.
I want to start with the Oilers and talk about how incredible it is to see them in the Stanley Cup Final, considering what they were like in November, with how tough their season start was and how far behind they were in the standings. And then all of a sudden they do a complete 180, obviously with the hiring of Chris Knobloch as their head coach. And now they're here. Like, can you put into perspective the journey that the Edmonton Oilers of this season have been on? And you could add details from other seasons or anything else prior to that as well. But I really think seeing this Edmonton Oilers team go from where they were at the beginning of the year to now, I think that's an incredible story.
Well, they were a Stanley Cup favorite that reached the Stanley Cup, yet started 2-9-1. Like, I mean, that's as weird and unusual as you can imagine. I mean, some of that obviously was goaltending. The way a team can get on a great roll, I think sometimes it's getting away from you. Like the margins necessarily aren't that big, but they got a coach fired in November. I mean, hard to believe. Pretty unusual. Even usually when you see an in-season coaching change, you're bringing someone up, say from the HL, or you're maybe someone who's unemployed in that moment. But they hired Chris Knobloch from another organization's American Hockey League team. He was in Hartford, the Rangers affiliate. Wouldn't that have been a storyline had the Rangers got through, and you would have had them wondering maybe if they shouldn't have let him go to Edmonton, although of course that's not the way things are done. But yeah, I mean, it was really a strange ride. And I can tell you, I've heard from other teams that Edmonton's underlying numbers this year are like the best metrics that people have kind of ever seen. And so maybe some of that gets overshadowed by the fact they dug such a big hole that, they didn't get to a point where they won the President's Trophy or finished atop the standings. I mean, it took a little while just to get back into what would be playoff positioning, and then, climbing up the standings a little bit in the Pacific there towards the end of the year. But, they full credit. They found a way to put it all back together. And this was such a big year at Edmonton all along, just with some of the uncertainty on the horizon with, Leon Draisaitl only being signed for 1 year. Ken Holland, their general manager, isn't signed beyond this season. There's just the feeling of change in the air. And so this was kind of like the last guaranteed year, 100%, where this group could try to get it done. I mean, look, they've been knocking at the door. They got to the conference final 2 years ago and lost to Colorado, who won the cup. They lost in the second round last year to Vegas, who won the cup. They've been a top team for some time now, but we've seen top teams. The San Jose Sharks were a top team for a long time. They even got to a cup final and they never quite got the job done. It's not a guarantee, even if you have a long run of success, that you ever get a chance to win the cup. And so I think that's what makes this so imperative is obviously they've answered some stories here, some questions here with what they've been able to do, but they still got to go win the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, it's fair or not. I mean, that's the way history kind of remembers teams is the ones that get it done. And they've given themselves a great opportunity, but the last 4 wins aren't going to be easy. I've got the long flights. They've got the long flights. Those flights are going to be even longer. One team's going to have a chance to win the cup, right? At some point, whether maybe it doesn't come till game 6 and it's a 3-2 series, but there's a chance you fly all the way to one of the cities with a chance to win the cup. You don't win it, you got to fly all the way back. I mean, some of that stuff does get in your mind by the end, I think. I mean, I remember that Kings Rangers series, which, didn't end up being quite as long a distance, but it was pretty far. Like those were like 6-hour flights. At least there was directs, but it was 3-1 and, the Rangers managed to win game 5, sent it all the way back to LA, and the Kings were on fumes at that point. I think they won the series against game 6 in double overtime on the Alec Martinez goal. But I've heard that some of the Kings players say after, like, if we didn't win that game, like we might not have won game 7. Like they just, like, it's just so far to go back and like mentally to get yourself in the right place. And so that will be a factor as this thing goes along, as long as it is a long series and it isn't one-sided in one direction or the other. So that's a long meandering answer to your question, but I just think Edmonton, for the last few years at the deadline, they're making trades with the idea of like, this will be the final piece to get us over the hump. They elected not to trade for defensemen this year at the deadline, which was a choice, right? They're looking at the guys like Sean Walker, who ends up in Colorado. I mean, like the players that were high up on the big board list, you can be sure that Edmonton was in conversations or at least thought about them all, but they add Adam Henrique, Carrick as well. And they've surrounded their top players, I think, with a better forward cast than they've had. And then obviously Evan Bouchard, his emergence has changed everything, because all of a sudden now they got a top pairing defenseman along with Matthias Ekholm, who they traded for a couple years ago, and everything just slides into place. So you hope that you can develop that player, or that player's in your system when you're a top team, because to go out and trade for his equivalent is not an easy thing or cheap thing to do. And so I think he's been, a huge difference maker coming from where he is, just the minutes he's playing, the points he's put up, and really giving them a different look from their back end.
One thing I think about when I look at this Oilers roster is how we've had episodes in the past about whether or not the Oilers should be looking for a goaltender. If they are able to get that piece to help their team along, maybe that's the piece that gets them over the top. We've talked about it on the show. So to see them get to the Stanley Cup Final as constructed, you mentioned the changes with Adam Henrique and Carrick being added, but Stuart Skinner, the young Stuart Skinner, who has had an up and down postseason, he's the guy that brings them to the Stanley Cup Final. When you see that, what does that make you think? Well,
I think it's kind of a continuation of a trend. I say this with respect, but Aiden Hill wasn't getting a ton of love. And then, he was the goaltender of record for Vegas in last year's Cup win. Darcy Kemper was splitting. Remember, he got injured in their Cup run. I think he got hit in the eye and missed some time. But Francouz, like it hasn't been all just, future Hall of Fame goaltenders carrying their teams. And what's funny is obviously Sergei Bobrovsky could be the counterpoint to this point. If Florida goes and wins, and, we've talked in the past on our show about, He's probably a Hall of Famer already, or he's certainly like he's very much in the conversation. Like, it's not an automatic no, that's for sure. But if he could, find a way to get his cup, it probably secures it. Especially, there's a chance it comes with a Conn Smythe trophy. We'd see how that voting would shake out. But I mean, I think that this is the NHL now. It's not all for sure. And you're right. Like Skinner gets removed in that series, against Vancouver, right? And Kelvin Pickard went in and won a game for them. And then they went back to Skinner, and it has been some ups and downs, and he looked awfully steady in helping, close out the 10-shot win that Edmonton had to reach the Cup final, to close out the Dallas Stars on Sunday night. And so, I think you need him to be good enough. Obviously you hope for great every now and again then too. But I think with the offense the Oilers have, with the power play they have, and now with the penalty kill,
Yep.
And obviously the goaltender gets credit for that. He's got to make, every goaltender has to make saves for you to kill penalties. No team gets through a penalty kill without allowing any shots against. Those sorts of things have helped give the Oilers an edge at the margins where, they're not always, they didn't dominate Dallas the whole way through that series. They certainly had some really nice stretches, especially to take back the series down 2-0 in Game 4, down 2-1 in the series. From that point on, they really had an important run of dominance to seize control of that series. But, I think Skinner is good enough to win a cup, because we've seen other goaltenders in the same kind of class get the job done. And he's just got to hang on for another couple of weeks and see what he can do. But pretty good story, man. He's an Edmonton kid, grew up loving Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, was his favorite player. So what a story that is, that he and Ryan might be passing the cup back and forth in a couple weeks' time.
Okay, one more about the Oilers before we focus a little bit more on the Panthers. Connor McDavid. Year 9 of Connor McDavid as an Edmonton Oiler, he finally reaches the Stanley Cup final. What does this series... Let me try to ask this as best as I can here. What does this series mean, the impact of it, for the sake of his legacy?
Well, he's walking into the Hall of Fame no matter what happens next. He could retire tomorrow on the eve of the series, and he's going to the Hall of Fame. So his legacy in some ways is secured, but what we're talking about with Connor McDavid is how high up the all-time greats can he become, right? And I can't say just yet where that's going to land, but winning a Stanley Cup and potentially Stanley Cups, I think is fairly paramount to that. You look at the top 10 point getters in NHL history. Only one person on that top 10 list, Marcel Dion, doesn't have a Stanley Cup. If you extend it out to the top 20, I believe it's 3 players don't have a Stanley Cup inside the top 20. But the point is hockey, of course, is it's a team game, and it's celebrated for that. But the absolute best of the best always find a way to get their team to a championship, and they don't do it alone. And Connor McDavid's not doing it alone. But I do think a cup is to launch him into a certain echelon all time. A cup would really help do that. And look, I'll say the same thing if we're having this conversation ahead of the 2026 Olympics. Adding an Olympic gold medal will also help do that, because a lot of the players that he ultimately will be compared against across history will have had those kind of accomplishments. And he's got the scoring titles and Hart trophies and all that taken care of. But adding a Conn Smythe, adding a Stanley Cup, this is the stuff that, it separates you from the very, very, very good to all-time greatness. And there's nothing, let's hope Connor McDavid stays healthy, just for the sake of the sport, and he plays another 10 years. There's nothing stopping him from being literally considered, perhaps, I don't know if it can go down as the greatest all time, but I don't think you can say he can't be. He's trending towards point totals that, he's almost already at 1,000 points. He could hit 2,000, which, you're talking Wayne Gretzky only, basically at this point. And individual awards, as I say, he's got those well taken care of. So, I think that this is huge for him, for his teammates, and my point remains about Edmonton. I'm not predicting anything, and I don't know how it's all going to shake out with the next contracts if they all stay together. But you can't say it's necessarily going to happen. Even to be the captain of the team that breaks this long Canadian drought in the Cup final. I think all those things. That's partly narrative. That's not Connor McDavid's fault that all these teams didn't win for the 25 years before he even entered the league. But to be the team potentially to get it done and to be the star and the heartbeat of that team. That's a pretty special opportunity. So this is as big as it gets for the best in the game right now. And man, what a sense of occasion he had in helping get the Oilers through that game where he was first to admit, he was doing the on-ice interview with Kyle Bukauskas on Sportsnet afterwards. He's like, I wish we played better. They were not hiding beyond the fact that they didn't have their best, but they still found a way to get the job done and to close out the Stars. And, this is the time when legends are made. I mean, if you've seen the Mario Lemieux between the defenseman goal, that's literally commemorated with a statue outside of PPG Giants Arena in Pittsburgh. That happened in the Stanley Cup Final. Like if you can have a moment, if you can, it doesn't necessarily even have to be a highlight reel goal. It could just be the timing of a goal. You know, the Stefan Matteau, that was actually the Eastern Conference Final, but you know, that wasn't a highlight reel goal, but it was such a big goal for the Rangers on the way to winning their cup. I mean, he's got a chance now to really do something that will be remembered for, 30 plus years and perhaps longer. And certainly, Edmonton was once known as a city of champions. There haven't been many champions there lately, but they got a chance to have a parade there. And that's something special.
You mentioned the highlight reel goals. Connor can say he has one this postseason with that incredible goal he scored in the first period of Game 6. That was one of the most incredible. That's definitely on the top 5, top 3 Connor McDavid goals of all time, considering the circumstances, considering how he was able to stick handle through everybody before finishing. That's going to go down as one of his greatest, if not his greatest goal. It
might be one given the circumstances. Like you might argue on the degree of difficulty scale, he scored a tougher one, whether it was that goal against the Rangers where he goes through the whole team or, some others over the years. But I mean, that's 5 minutes into a closeout game on home ice to go to the Stanley Cup Final. And the move is just ridiculous. And the fact that it's Miro Heiskanen that he's stepping around, not just some run of the mill defender. I mean, guy that could be up for a Norris every year. I just think you add all that together, the elements say that's probably the best goal of his career. And the funny thing is it might only live on the best goal of his career resume for, a week or two. We might see something here in game 1 or 2 or 5 or 7 of this cup final that maybe supplants it. But, McDavid is, I mean, we know like his talent has never been questioned. I don't even know if he's been questioned that much. I kind of feel like the Oilers, they've fallen short in some previous seasons. I don't, maybe because I'm out of the market, but I've never heard anyone really be dogging on him. I think it's more like this management group isn't putting the right players around him, or that, they're not building the right team to win with him. You got to maximize his window. I haven't seen much pointed criticism at McDavid over the years. And that's just because that's how good he's been. I mean, he's got a skill set that's unmatched. Certainly his ability to go from like first gear to fifth gear in a blink of an eye, and obviously can skate faster than anyone else in the world and can make the plays at that speed. I mean, I think that in essence is his superpower is he can go around the defenseman at that speed and then somehow backhand that into the opposite corner. I mean, in such tight space. I mean, that was a special goal. And it was one of those ones. I'm glad they had the low angle camera. I don't know if you saw it. Like, it wouldn't be the what you'd call the TV camera angle. You'd only see it on replay, but there's one replay that really captures the high degree of difficulty to pull off that move. And, what a scene in Edmonton. I haven't been out there yet to cover any of the games during this playoffs, but seeing all the people out kind of in the square around the arena, it's going to be weird. It's actually going to be my first trip back to that building since the 2020 Pandemic Cup. I was one of maybe 200 or 300 people in the building covering the Eastern and Western Conference Final and the Cup Final during the pandemic. And there's no fans, and that's where Tampa won the Cup, the first of their 2. And I mean, it's going to be honestly, it's going to be so nice to erase that memory and because I remember walking to those games and being like, I'm walking to a Cup Final game and it's like a ghost town. It's like the world doesn't even know what's going on here. And obviously that won't be the case when we get to game 3 and you'll be walking through thousands of people and feeling the energy again. And no, it's going to be cool. I'm pumped for this matchup. I think really compelling in a lot of ways. And I don't know who's going to win. I mean, I picked Edmonton at the start of the year before all that chaos. Edmonton was my preseason pick, so I guess I probably got to stick with them.
You know what? In the group chat yesterday, I said Florida. Give me a few more days to think about it. And we should focus a little bit more on the Florida Panthers too, because this team is back in the Stanley Cup Final. We know about the horses, guys like Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, who has done an incredible job of shutting down the best players against teams like Tampa Bay, the Rangers as well in that conversation, the Bruins, of course. Just an incredible postseason for him. We mentioned Sergei Bobrovsky and Paul Maurice along the way, who, he's been the quote machine, but he has to have some credit for how far this team has gone as well. What do you think of the Panthers?
Well, it's so hard to get back to a cup after you've lost one. Just the fact that it hasn't happened since 08, 09 when Pittsburgh lost the final to Detroit and then ultimately won game 7 in 2009. Every team that loses, you think we were this close and we'll be back there. It doesn't always work that way. Right. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. I think it's a short summer. It's a cap world where you can't keep your teams fully together. And, Florida lost, Radko Gudas, for example. It was kind of a blood and guts guy for them in that cup run last year. Anthony Duclair, they couldn't keep together the exact same team, but they managed to go out and find some defensemen, especially with the injuries they had earlier in the year. Oliver Ekman-Larsson came in on a more manageable contract, and you look differently at the player, right, than what it was in Vancouver before he was bought out. Dmitry Kulikov, like they found a way to find some parts around the edges, and then it helps in their run at the deadline that Vladimir Tarasenko had a no trade clause. He was only waiving it for one place, so that's a good bounce. They also went out and got Kyle Okposo, and now they have a team that they're scratching legit NHLers up front because they're so deep at forward. They've got the goaltender, they've got the high end guys, as you mentioned. Barkov, I think has been getting his flowers the last number of years. It's not a surprise to anyone anymore. Selke caliber player. You've got Verhaeghe, great goal scorer. Obviously 57 goals for Sam Reinhart this year, and another bunch in the playoffs. I mean, they just got a good team top to bottom, and they managed to not have that short summer hurt them. I mean, the fact that it's 2 weeks after they lost in the cup final and they're renting ice together to start skating again last year, like that's when you play it deep into June and that's the mindset of your best players. I mean, they're driven, they're channeling their energy. It's so friggin' hard to be the best of the best of the best, but these guys, they got a shot at it, and it's a shot at redemption for them. I mean, Paul Maurice has said he felt like last year when they got to the final, they kind of were sort of spent, that they didn't have anything left to give. They don't give you that sense this year. I mean, I feel like that team's cranking on all cylinders, and they're going to give Edmonton all they can handle. I can tell you that much.
Just the way the Panthers have worn down these teams in the playoffs and have gotten everything from playing heavy from their best players. Like as much as cool as the Connor McDavid Stanley Cup story is, there's just something inevitable and unbeatable about this Florida Panthers team that I can't deny. And teams like that have won cups. Like I think this might be the year the Panthers figured it out, which, hey, if you like the Oilers, sorry, but I think the Panthers might have it. I think they might have it.
I mean, look, there's a lot of elements of the series, though. I mean, if they get into penalty trouble, Edmonton's got a power play that can bury you. And as I mentioned earlier, Edmonton's not giving it up shorthanded. So, I mean, they tend to have they've had the edge in specialty teams, which usually is a predictor of who's going to have success in a series. I'm less convinced. I mean, look, and I said I'm picking the Oilers, so I'm not going to call them inevitable and whatever, but I mean, they're a damn good hockey team. I mean, I'm certainly, there's not an obvious flaw there. I think would be my take on the Panthers. I mean, what would you even poke at? I mean, they like this Gustav Forsling has come through as top defender. They still have Ekblad and Montour. They literally run 3 scoring lines deep. And Bobrovsky's been good and to great at times. So, last year maybe the clock struck midnight a little bit on their goaltending when they got to the cup final. So we'll see if Bobrovsky can hold up against a pretty high powered offense. I mean, it's a little bit. I still think of the Oilers as a high octane offensive team. And you think of the Panthers, I mean, obviously they got a 57 goal scorer. So it's not like they're lacking star power. They got Matthew Tkachuk, but they're a little grittier, right? So it's a little bit of a stylistic matchup. And so it's hard to predict how that will work out fight-wise. It's probably going to be a feel it out game 1, I would think, just because it's kind of weird having this break before the final series. And then obviously just 2 teams that don't play each other a lot. I mean, the stakes are high, but no one's going to want to make a mistake in that first game. So Saturday's game probably won't tell us a whole lot, but I would think by the time we get to game 2 next Monday, start to get into the series and get a feel for how things are going to go. And, there's nothing beats the Stanley Cup. I mean, everybody is probably running on fumes to some degree by now. There's obviously lots of injuries or ailments that are, holding the players back, but like you're just pushing it through to try to, there's not a lot of guys in this series that have won the cup either, which is kind of unique, right? I mean, there's not a lot of players on either side that have actually, tasted that. And on the Panthers side, obviously there's a lot that have tasted defeat because it's pretty fresh in our minds from last year. So, I think it's going to be a pretty cool thing to watch, like two teams that really have a lot to play for, and you never know, like this could be the last time either of them are back here. So you want to make the best of this opportunity.
Absolutely. This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. The shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. You've seen us hype up the product before. You know how great they look. Go get yourself a pair right now. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements, and if you don't love your shades, exchange them for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. Go to ShadyRays.com and use the code Johnston for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. ShadyRays.com. Use the code Johnston for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by Shopify. Let's go through some dynamic teammates who got it done. Gronk and Brady, Pippen and Jordan, Venus and Serena. What about the perfect teammates when it comes to growing your business? That's you and Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify is there to help you grow. Whether you're auctioning autographed apparel or selling sleek skis, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify also helps turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, up to 36% better compared to other leading commerce platforms, and you can sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. All you have to do, you listening to this ad or watching this ad, sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Johnston. Johnston is all lowercase, and that will help you grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Go to shopify.com/Johnston now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Johnston. Do we have time for questions for Ask CJ as we normally do? I know we've made this podcast a lot shorter than we normally do on a Monday.
Yeah, I think we got time. 10 or 15 minutes still.
I think we do. Thank you for everyone who sent in questions up on Twitter and on Discord, as we normally do for all of our Monday shows, whenever we can anyway. Let's start with this one from Frozen Flames 526. I think this is one on Discord. CJ and Julian, rank these events throughout the hockey season from most to least exciting. Trade deadline day, draft lottery, NHL draft, Stanley Cup final, free agency day. Well, I would think draft lottery would probably be on the low end to start. That might be the easiest.
Yeah, draft or draft lottery. Like I don't find, like, the draft is kind of cool, but I don't find the event quote unquote exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be towards the bottom. What were the other ones? Free agency day is almost the most exciting because it's the start of summer vacation, but that's not the spirit of the question.
Yeah. Deadline day, trade deadline day is there, and the Stanley Cup Finals there.
I'd say deadline day is probably the most exciting because deadline day, it's a day where like lots of teams can still dream of being where now the Oilers and Panthers are. And even if you don't get the most exciting trades, like I feel like it's kind of like a day to celebrate the sport and to go in on every team and to, there's lots of buzz. Like I think that's probably the most exciting. But the Cup final, nothing beats, especially the night that it's handed out. I don't like, for me, that's as good as it gets. Like watching the players' families come on the ice, the emotion, just, I mean, it's so hard to win. It makes grown men cry, man. It's just such a cool night. And all the ones I've had the pleasure of being on the ice for, being around, like I remember it pretty clearly, like what you see, like a lot of that stuff really sticks. So that actually might be the most pure for me, exciting day, but it's between that and draft lottery and then, or sorry, draft lottery, deadline day. And then I'll go free agency day, cause it's the start of summer vacation. And then the draft lottery and draft are at the bottom, just cause I'm not a big draft guy, right? Like, yeah, I'm not hating on anyone who loves that stuff. I make no bones about it. I do not watch enough games to have an informed opinion on the best prospects. I don't have a lot of stake in, does this team choose this player at number 5 or number 7 or number 12? And so I'll leave that to Corey Pronman and Scott Wheeler and the experts, Bob McKenzie, TSN. And, I'm really at the draft usually to try to cover trades, and we don't always get trades at the draft, or at least big ones.
Yeah, I think you have that list right. I'll say Stanley Cup Final at the top. Like, I wasn't there for the game where the Stanley Cup was handed out, but just being in the building and being around when the final is happening, like that's incredible. I can't wait until I get that feeling again. I'll say that's number 1. Trade deadline number 2. Yeah, free agency number 3. I don't know. The last few drafts I've loved. I like this. I like drafts. I'm not a draft guy like Pronman and Wheeler, but I do like the drama. I like the drama that comes out of draft. And I'll say that, I mean, the first time I ever covered a draft, that was the 2022 draft where Uri Slafkovsky went first, and we were looking at Shane Wright and where he was going to get picked, and then some draft day trades were going on that day. That was really exciting. I'll put the draft lottery at the bottom. I guess in the middle for me, it's really deciding between free agency day and the draft. I'll say Stanley Cup Final first, trade deadline day second, NHL draft third, free agency day fourth, and then draft lottery fifth. I just think the drafts I've been at, there's been enough. I've enjoyed the drama and the storylines that have happened at the 2 NHL drafts I've been at. I mean, I was at the Connor Bedard one last year and the Uri Slafkovsky one the year before. Those are 2 pretty cool, and plus the cities as well, Montreal and Nashville. Like, those are pretty good drafts. Those are pretty good draft cities.
They are pretty good. I'm not looking forward to Vegas, if I'm being honest, but
yeah, you know what?
The downside of Vegas is so hard to get around. Yeah. It's so easy to get lost. Like, the fun of the draft is bumping into everyone. And I just feel like in Vegas, there's too many different hotels. Like, you won't bump into people the same way, I think.
Also, Vegas is not a city you need to be in for like a week. You can just hang out for 2-3 days max, and then you're fine.
I've only ever been there for work, basically, too. Like, I've probably been there 30 times, but it's always been for work. And it's just not, it's not fun working when everyone else is like losing their crap around you. Like, like it's just sort of like, yeah, anyway.
Yeah. I realize us complaining about being in Vegas for the draft is going to ring very hollow to our listeners. So
fair. Yeah. I just put it this way. I'm not that upset about them going to the decentralized draft and just covering it from where I live in the future.
Really? Maybe it's because I haven't covered as many as you have.
You're thinking of the social element. I'm thinking of the work element.
Yeah, that's fair. Because there is a social element to it. Like, and it's an amazing part of it. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm always so busy. Like, I can never do the social thing. Like, and it's so close to free agency, and there's just like a lot of rumors, and there's just like a lot of news, and so it's not really a time where I can let loose in any way. And so that's why it's just easier to stay home and work the phones.
I mean, I've seen Elliot Friedman at least one of these draft parties. He didn't do much, but like I've seen him take breaks.
I can tell you didn't see me.
I know I didn't see you.
Nashville or Montreal, I didn't do anything damaging.
But you know what? Well, that's good. But
you can't mix in a hangover when you're like, the other thing too is, look, it's only 2 days from the start of vacation. So like, if you're me, it's just better to push through, and then I could do whatever I want in July. Right. So
that's true. That's fair. And also just the fact that you work as hard as you do, a testament to why you are so good at your job. I'll give you that.
Oh,
Next one.
we all
from
pick our
Yusuf-
spots.
This next one from Yusuf Rashid. Hey, CJ, if you can go on a run with any hockey player, who would you run with? I have a guess as to who you'd pick.
Well, Zdeno Chara.
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
I mean, I'm hoping to make that happen. It's one of those, for me, it's been in the back of my mind as it could be a cool story is to go for a run with him, really go deep on why he loves running, what he loves about it, what it feeds in him, post playing career, because he's really an amazing athlete to do the number of marathons he's done. I've lost track of the exact number, but it's something like 10 in the last year, which is bananas. Even if you have full time to train, it's just a lot on your body. So he's sort of my white whale in terms of landing a story. Admittedly, I haven't done anything. I haven't reached out to him directly yet to ask, and was always looking for the right time. But hopefully at some point at the Athletic, you'll be seeing a picture of him and I running alongside each other, and he's a good foot taller than me.
Might be 2 feet taller than you.
But I'd love to go for a run with him. Most, I'd say.
From Wendy Mayer, best thing to order at Tim Hortons.
I'm not a big Tim Hortons goer, but if I do go there, I would get a bacon breakfast sandwich on an English muffin. But I'm not a frequenter. And then I usually drink the dark roast black coffee or tea.
You keep the egg and cheese in your bacon muffin?
Yeah, that's what it comes with, I think.
I don't. I do like a bacon sausage muffin, and I take out the egg and cheese.
Oh, that's our difference. But yeah, I'm not. Admittedly, I don't go to Tim Hortons too often.
That's fair.
There's one right beside the Leafs practice rink. So sometimes, like when you're in the grind of the season and you haven't properly prepared for a day, might pick up a breakfast sandwich on my way to the rink.
Very fair. From John R. I would like to know who Julian and Chris would want at their famous dinner table. You get to choose 3 people, living or past, to have dinner with you. Who do you choose?
Oh, man. Have you thought about this? Maybe you can give your answer first.
There's only one person I know for sure I would want there. It's Muhammad Ali. I think, it's Muhammad Ali. It's one of the greatest legends to have ever graced the face of the earth. He'd have to be there. I'll say Muhammad Ali. I don't know. Like, once you have Muhammad Ali there, I don't know if I really need anyone else.
Right.
This is. I gotta think.
I'd have like Tiger Woods.
Oh, that's good. That's actually
Wayne Gretzky. I'd love to have like one more like all-time great athlete just to like hear them talk about whatever they would talk about. It's almost like it's not even that I would want to be interviewing them. I would just almost want to see how they interplay with each other. And I know Wayne's a big golfer, so that would work well.
Yeah, Muhammad. You know what? I'll say Muhammad. I'll take Tiger. I know you mentioned Tiger. I'll take him. And it would be cool to meet Wayne Gretzky one day. It would be cool to just, actually meet him in the flesh. So I'll add him to that. So I'll say Muhammad, Tiger, and Wayne.
Perfect. We got a pretty good table there.
I think that's a pretty.
We just
table.
sit back and watch from that point. Try not to make too much noise while reading our food.
Try not to embarrass ourselves. How about this next one from Oliver Wilson? Hey, Chris and Julian. I love Brandon Montour, but I don't know what a top D pair looks like up close because I'm a Leafs fan. Is Brandon Montour a top 2 guy worth spending on in free agency?
Potentially. I mean, certainly I would say he's among the top 3 or 4 defensemen in this UFA class. Pretty offense first type of defenseman. So maybe you're playing him on a second pair. But he's going to do very well in free agency. I think Brady Shea is going to do really well as a free agent, UFA. The Leafs probably need 2 defensemen. I don't know if the best approach is to spend on one of the ones that's going to get the most amount of money, or maybe to go for 2 sort of mid-range players. That's going to be interesting to watch. But I do think the Leafs are going to come back with a pretty different blue line next year than what they finished the season off as. And, I don't know that Montour necessarily is a top target, but certainly there's a number of UFA defensemen that kind of fit the mold and I think can help reshape what that Leafs blue line looks like next season.
Okay. Last one for you. I literally had it in front of me, and no, I got it back. Go Jets go. Likelihood of Jets re-signing Sean Monahan and a Nikolai Ehlers trade.
I think Monahan's likely going to test free agency. At his stage of his career, you could see why you might want to choose where his next destination is. Ehlers, I've heard some of those trade rumors out there. I can't gauge the likelihood. It seems certainly possible. You're getting to a point where he's 1 year out from, he's not a free agent this year, right? He's got 1 more year on his contract, I believe. So you're kind of making a decision one way or another. And I think certainly he would have some value out there, but it's all about finding the right trade fit. And at this point, I don't have a good sense of if anything makes sense for the Jets, but certainly we'll dig into that as we get a little closer to the draft and the trading period heating up.
Absolutely. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions for Ask CJ. We'll be back on Thursday with a brand new episode of the CJ Show. CJ will be back. I will be with my grandmother who is turning 90.
Félicitations.
Félicitations. Why did you say that in French?
I don't know. Isn't that like congratulations?
It is congratulations. I was just curious why you said that in French.
I don't know, because you're in Montreal, aren't you?
I mean, I am in Montreal for now.
So I was just congratulating you. I don't know. I thought it was a kind thing to do.
You know what?
I was like, I didn't think too deeply about it. You're in Montreal and I was congratulating you.
No, that makes sense. No, I was just, that does make a lot of sense. You're right. I was just like, my grandmother, it's funny because my grandmother doesn't speak French. So like, I'd be like, oh, okay. That's why I was really confused.
Yeah, but you do. I'm congratulating you and your family.
I appreciate that.
90 is something we're celebrating, man. That's awesome.
It is an incredible thing worth celebrating, and I can't wait to be with my grandmother to do that. So I'm sure we'll get someone great to guest host in my absence, but I'll be back for next week, and we'll be able to talk more about the Stanley Cup Final as it progresses. For CJ, I'm Julian. So long, and peace.
Félicitations.
Félicitations.
The Chris Johnston Show. Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK and McKenzie.